The poor single dad had nothing to eat on Christmas Eve, until the CEO invited him to a dinner that would change everything forever. Tell us your city below, then enjoy the story and subscribe for more. Trust me, the ending will leave you speechless. Marcus Rivera's hands were raw. 14 hours into his shift at Bellamy's, the kind of upscale restaurant where a single appetizer cost more than his weekly grocery budget, and the skin between his fingers had started to crack. Dish soap and scalding water, that was his Christmas Eve. He counted the tips in his pocket during his break. $4. 37. 3 crumpled singles and a handful of coins that felt heavier than they should. "Daddy's gonna bring something special home," he'd promised Tommy that morning, his 7-year-old son's brown eyes wide with the kind of hope that made Marcus's chest ache. "Maybe we can get those chicken nuggets you like." But $4.37 wouldn't buy nuggets. It wouldn't buy anything that resembled Christmas. The kitchen buzzed around him. Stainless steel, white noise, the angry hiss of flames under copper pots. Chef Bernard barked orders in French-accented English. Servers rushed through the swinging doors, carrying $85 steaks and $200 bottles of wine to people who didn't look twice at the men who made their meals. Marcus wiped his forehead with his sleeve. His white cook's shirt was stained gray from grease and sweat. His feet throbbed in his second-hand work boots, 12-hour days, 6 days a week, and his body was starting to forget what rest felt like. "Rivera!" Bernard's voice cut through the chaos. "Table 9 sent back the risotto. Fix it. Now." Marcus bit back a response. "Yes, chef. Always yes, chef." Even when Table 9's complaint was that the risotto was too creamy, which was exactly how risotto was supposed to be. But the customer was always right, especially on Christmas Eve, when they were dropping $400 on dinner and you were just the guy who stirred the pot. He caught a glimpse through the circular window in the kitchen door. Table 9. A man in a charcoal suit that probably cost 3 months of Marcus's rent, laughing too loud. Wine glass tilted at an angle that screamed entitlement. The woman next to him picked at her food like it was a chore. Rich people problems. Marcus remade the risotto. Less cream, more salt. Exactly the same as before, but plated on a fresh dish, because perception mattered more than reality in places like this. "Take this out," Bernard shoved the plate at him, "and smile. They're paying for the experience." Marcus pushed through the kitchen door, the plate balanced on his palm. The dining room was a different world. Soft lighting, crystal chandeliers, the low murmur of conversations that never mentioned money because money was assumed. Classical music played from hidden speakers. Everything was cream and gold and polished to a shine that reflected the kind of life Marcus would never touch. He approached Table 9, shoulders squared, face neutral. "Your risotto, sir." He set the plate down with the careful precision of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. The man in the charcoal suit didn't look up. "Took you long enough?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Enjoy your meal." "Wait!" The man's voice was sharp. He picked up his fork, took one bite, and his face twisted like he'd tasted poison. "This is worse than the first one. What kind of place is this?" "Sir, You can what? Ruin my Christmas Eve even more?" The man's voice rose, heads turned at nearby tables. "I'm paying $400 for this meal, and you bring me slop that I wouldn't feed to my dog?" Marcus felt heat crawl up his neck. Stay calm, stay professional. Tommy needed this job. "I apologize, sir. I'll have the chef." "The chef is incompetent, and frankly, so are you." The man stood, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. He pulled out his wallet, threw 2 20s on the table. "Keep the change. Merry Christmas. $40. For a $400 meal." The man walked out like he'd done Marcus a favor. Marcus stood there, the empty plate still in his hand, feeling every eye in the restaurant on him. His ears burned, his throat felt tight. But he kept his face blank, because breaking down wasn't an option when you had a 7-year-old waiting at home. He turned to clear the table, and that's when he saw her. 3 tables away, a woman with dark hair pulled into a sleek bun, wearing a navy dress that probably cost more than Marcus's car. She wasn't looking at her phone like everyone else. She was looking at him, not through him, not past him, at him. Her eyes were the color of smoke, and there was something in them Marcus couldn't name. Sympathy, curiosity, whatever it was, it made his stomach twist. She tilted her head slightly, like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Then her companion, a man with silver hair and a Rolex that caught the light, said something, and she looked away. Marcus exhaled slowly and walked back to the kitchen. The rest of the shift blurred, dishes piled in the sink like a mountain of white porcelain and grease. His back ached, his hands stung. At 11:58 p.m., Bernard finally waved him off. "Go. Merry Christmas or whatever." Marcus stripped off his apron, grabbed his worn canvas jacket from the hook by the back door, and stepped into the December cold. The air hit him like a slap. 32 degrees, sharp and clean after hours of kitchen heat. His breath fogged in front of him. The alley behind Bellamy's smelled like garbage and wet asphalt. A few scattered snowflakes drifted down, melting the moment they touched the ground. Christmas Eve, technically Christmas now. 12:01 a.m., Marcus pulled out his phone. 2 texts from Mrs. Chen, his neighbor who watched Tommy after school. "He's asleep. Sweet boy. Left some rice for you in the fridge. Merry Christmas, Marcus. You're a good father." His throat tightened. Mrs. Chen, 68 years old, living on Social Security, still thought to leave him food. He shoved the phone back in his pocket and started walking. 3 buses home, 45 minutes if he was lucky. Longer if the holiday schedule messed with routes. He made it 4 steps before he heard footsteps behind him. "Excuse me," a woman's voice, soft but clear. Marcus turned. It was her, the woman from Table 9. Up close she was even more out of place. Navy dress, heels that clicked on wet pavement, a coat that looked like it belonged in a magazine. But her eyes were the same, sharp, searching. "Can I help you?" Marcus asked, his voice rougher than he intended. She smiled, and it wasn't the kind of smile rich people usually gave him. It didn't look practiced. "I saw what happened in there," she said, "with that man. I wanted to apologize on behalf of, well, people like him." Marcus blinked. "You don't need to apologize for someone else's bad manners. Maybe not, but I wanted to." She paused, and for a second she looked uncertain. "I'm Victoria Ashford." The name clicked. Ashford Technologies. CEO, billionaire. He'd seen her face on the business section of newspapers left behind at the restaurant. "Marcus Rivera." He didn't offer his hand. His hands were still red and raw. "You work here?" she asked. "Line cook, dishwasher when they need it." He crossed his arms. "Did you need something, Ms. Ashford? It's late." "Victoria," she corrected. "And I don't know. I just felt like I should say something." She glanced back at the restaurant, then at him. "That man was a jackass. You handled it with more grace than I would have." Marcus almost laughed. Grace. That's what she called survival. "I handle a lot of things," he said. "It's what you do when you've got a kid depending on you." Something shifted in her expression. "You have a son, 7 years old, Tommy." The name came out before he could stop it, and saying it here, in this cold alley with a billionaire stranger, felt wrong, like he was exposing something that didn't belong to this world. "Well, Marcus Rivera," Victoria said slowly, "I hope Tommy has a good Christmas." She turned to leave, and Marcus didn't know what possessed him. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the way she'd looked at him in the restaurant like he was a person and not just the help. But he called after her. "Ms. Ashford." She stopped, looked back. "Why'd you really come out here?" For a moment she didn't answer. Snowflakes caught in her hair, melting against the dark strands. Then she smiled again, smaller this time, almost sad. Because my father used to say that you can tell everything about a person by how they treat someone who can't do anything for them. And that man tonight, he showed me exactly who he was. She met Marcus's eyes. But so did you. Then she walked away, heels clicking against the pavement, disappearing around the corner like something out of a dream Marcus didn't have time for. He stood there in the cold, 4:37 in his pocket, and wondered what the hell just happened. Tommy's voice was the first thing Marcus heard. "Daddy, Santa came!" Marcus's eyes snapped open. For a second, he forgot where he was, collapsed on the couch in his clothes, still smelling like fryer grease and dishwater. Then reality slammed back. Christmas morning, no tree, no presents, Ford 37 to his name. "Daddy!" Tommy's small hands shook his shoulder. "Look!" Marcus sat up, his back screaming in protest. Tommy stood in front of him, holding a small candy cane, the cheap kind they gave out at the grocery store for free, with the kind of joy that made Marcus's heart crack open. Santa left this on the door. Tommy's grin was all missing teeth and pure belief. Marcus rubbed his face. Mrs. Chen had to be. The woman was a saint. That's great, buddy." His voice came out rough. "Merry Christmas!" Tommy climbed onto the couch next to him, candy cane clutched in both hands like it was made of gold. "Can we make pancakes, like Mommy used to?" And there it was, the gut punch Marcus had been waiting for. Mommy had left 2 years ago, walked out on Christmas morning, actually, which made the holiday a special kind of torture. She'd found someone with money. A real estate developer with a house in the suburbs and a car that cost more than Marcus made in 5 years. Sent one text. "I can't do this anymore. He deserves better, so do I." She meant Tommy deserved better than a struggling line cook for a father, and maybe she was right. "We don't have pancake mix, Tommy." Marcus kept his voice gentle. "But I can make eggs, and we've got bread for toast." "Okay." Tommy didn't lose the smile. 7 years old, and he'd learned to be grateful for what he had. That shouldn't be a lesson a kid learned this young. Marcus stood, joints popping, and walked to their kitchen, a narrow galley with chipped linoleum and a refrigerator that hummed too loud. He opened the fridge. Mrs. Chen's rice in a container, 2 eggs, half a loaf of bread, a container of butter that was more empty than full. He could make this work. As he cracked eggs into a bowl, Tommy chattered about what he wanted to do today. "Can we go to the park? Can we see the big tree downtown? Can we—" "Tommy." Marcus turned, whisk in hand. "Daddy has to work today." The light in Tommy's eyes dimmed. Just a little. Just enough to make Marcus feel like the worst father in the world. "But it's Christmas," Tommy said quietly. "I know, buddy, but some people still need to eat on Christmas, and that means the restaurant needs cooks." Marcus forced a smile. "Tell you what, I'll ask Mrs. Chen if you can go to the park with her. And when I get home tonight, we'll watch that movie you like, the one with the singing animals. The Jungle Book." Tommy perked up slightly. "Yeah, that one." Tommy nodded, but his shoulders slumped as he walked back to the living room. Marcus gripped the edge of the counter and closed his eyes. 2 years. 2 years of this, of working doubles and missing moments, and watching his son learn to swallow disappointment like it was normal. A man who feeds others never goes hungry. His own father's voice echoing from a decade ago. Back when Marcus was 17, and his dad was working 3 jobs to keep them afloat after Marcus's mom died. Back when hungry meant more than just food. Marcus opened his eyes, made the eggs, fed his son, got ready for another shift. December 25th, 1:15 p.m. Bellamy's was quieter on Christmas Day, only the bar and a few tables open for people who had nowhere else to be or too much money to care. Marcus prepped vegetables in the back, his knife moving in the rhythm he'd learned from Chef Bernard. Precise, efficient, fast. Rivera. Bernard appeared next to him, arms crossed. Table 4 needs their order in 10 minutes. Don't screw it up. Yes, chef. Marcus worked, muscle memory took over. Dice the onions, saute the mushrooms. Plate it like it matters, even though the people eating it probably wouldn't remember it tomorrow. At 2:30 p.m., a server burst into the kitchen. Marcus, someone's asking for you. He looked up, confused. What? Table 4. The woman. She asked for the cook who made her risotto. Marcus's stomach dropped. Complaint. Had to be. He wiped his hands on his apron and pushed through the doors. Table 4 sat in the corner by the window, and there she was, Victoria Ashford. Same sharp eyes, different dress, cream-coloured, elegant but not flashy. She was alone, no companions, no entourage, just her and a plate of risotto she'd barely touched. She looked up when he approached. Marcus, she said like they were old friends. Miss Ashford. He kept his voice professional. Is there a problem with your meal? No, it's perfect. She gestured to the empty chair across from her. Sit. Marcus blinked. I'm working. I know. I'll make it quick. Her smile was smaller today, more hesitant. Please. He glanced back at the kitchen. Bernard was busy yelling at someone else. Marcus pulled out the chair and sat, perched on the edge like he might need to run. Why are you here? He asked. I'm eating lunch. Her tone was light, but her eyes were serious. On Christmas Day, you don't have family, friends. I have a brother. We're not close. She picked up her fork, set it down without eating. I also have a house that's too big and too quiet, so I came here. Marcus didn't know what to say to that. He waited. I looked you up, Victoria said suddenly. His jaw tightened. That's creepy. Maybe, but I was curious. She leaned forward slightly. Marcus Rivera, 32 years old, worked at Bellamy's for 3 years. Before that, line cook at 6 different restaurants across the city. No college degree, single father, and before you think I'm some stalker, this is all public information. Why? Marcus's voice came out harder than he intended. Why do you care? Because last night I watched a man humiliate you and you took it. Not because you're weak, but because you had to. Because you have a son who depends on you and losing your job wasn't an option. Her eyes searched his face. That takes a different kind of strength, and I wanted to understand it. Marcus stood up. I should get back to work. Marcus, wait. Victoria reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. I have a proposition for you. He stared at the envelope like it was a snake. I don't take charity. It's not charity, it's a job offer. That stopped him. My company is hosting a New Year's gala. 200 guests. We need kitchen staff. I'm offering you a one-night position. $2,000. Cash. Marcus's brain stuttered. $2,000. That was more than he made in a month. That was Tommy's school supplies for a year. That was a cushion between them and eviction. Why me? He asked. Because I need someone who won't screw it up, and because... She hesitated. Because I think you deserve a break. There it was. Pity. He could taste it. I don't need your pity, Miss Ashford. He turned to leave. It's not pity. Her voice was sharper now. It's respect. Do you know how rare it is to find someone who treats their work with dignity, no matter how underpaid and undervalued they are? I've hired 50 people this year, and most of them are mediocre at best. You're not mediocre, Marcus. You're exceptional, and I'm offering you a chance to make some actual money doing what you're good at. Marcus stopped. His heart hammered against his ribs. Think about it, Victoria said. The gala is in a week, December 31st, 7 p.m. Into midnight. I'll pay you $2,000 and cover transportation. No strings, just good food and honest work. She stood, placed the envelope on the table, and walked past him. Merry Christmas, Marcus. she said quietly. Then she was gone. Marcus stared at the envelope. Inside, he knew, was probably her contact information, maybe a contract, maybe something that would change everything. He picked it up, felt the weight of it in his hand. $2,000, or his pride. Tommy's face flashed in his mind, the way he'd smiled at a free candy cane like it was the best gift in the world. Marcus shoved the envelope into his pocket and went back to the kitchen. Marcus stood outside the address Victoria had written on a card, tucked inside the envelope. He'd waited 2 days to open it, 2 days of scrubbing dishes and arguing with himself. The building in front of him was glass and steel, 40 stories of wealth that scraped the sky. Ashford Technologies was etched into the granite by the door. He didn't belong here, but $2,000 for Tommy. Marcus took a breath and pushed through the revolving door. The lobby was all marble and modern art. A security guard looked him up and down, torn jeans, canvas jacket, work boots, with the kind of expression that said you're lost. "I'm here to see Victoria Ashford," Marcus said. "Do you have an appointment?" "She left me this." He held up the card. The guard studied it, then picked up a phone. A low conversation, a pause. Then, 42nd floor, elevators to your left. Marcus rode the elevator alone, watching the numbers climb. 10, 20, 30. His reflection stared back at him from the polished steel doors. He looked tired. He looked poor. He looked exactly like what he was, a man out of his depth. The doors opened on 42. The space was open concept, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, desks arranged in clusters, tech everywhere, screens, cables, people with headphones hunched over keyboards. But it was after hours, so the floor was mostly empty, except for her. Victoria stood by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights. She turned when she heard the elevator, and her face softened into something that might have been relief. "You came," she said. "I almost didn't. But you did." Ooh. She walked toward him, heels clicking on polished concrete. "Thank you." "I haven't said yes yet." "I know." She stopped a few feet away. "Do you want to see the kitchen? The venue? I want to know why you're really doing this." Marcus met her eyes. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything, so why?" Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then she walked back to the window and gestured for him to follow. The city stretched out below them, a carpet of lights and movement. Marcus had lived here his whole life, but he'd never seen it from this height. "My father started this company in a garage," Victoria said. "He was an immigrant, came here with $200 and a dream, worked 3 jobs, slept 4 hours a night, built everything from nothing." Her voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. Grief, maybe. "He used to tell me that success wasn't about how much money you made, it was about how much you gave, and the people who mattered most were the ones society overlooked." Marcus listened. "He died 5 years ago," Victoria continued. "Heart attack at 61, worked himself to death, literally. And I inherited this empire he built. 10,000 employees, billions in revenue. But somewhere along the way, I forgot what he taught me. I got comfortable. I stopped seeing people like you." She turned to face him. "Last night, when I saw that man treat you like garbage, I saw my father, not me, him, and I was ashamed." Marcus's throat felt tight. "I'm not your redemption project." "No, you're not." Victoria's voice was firm. "But maybe this is mine." They stood there in silence, the weight of the city between them. Finally, Marcus spoke. "I need to know this is real, not some guilt trip where you feel good about yourself and I end up more broke than I started. It's real. Contract. Payment up front if you want. No catches." Marcus pulled the envelope from his pocket, unfolded the paper inside. It was a contract, standard terms, $2,000 payment, December 31st, 5 hours of work. He looked at her. really looked at her, saw the exhaustion in her eyes that matched his own, the loneliness that money couldn't fix, the weight of carrying something too heavy for one person. "I'll do it," he said, "but I'm doing it for my son, not for you." Victoria smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "I wouldn't want it any other way." She offered her hand. Marcus looked at it, soft, manicured, the hand of someone who'd never washed dishes until their fingers bled. Then he looked at his own, calloused, scarred, the hand of someone who knew exactly what it cost to survive. He shook her hand. "One more thing," Victoria said. "I'd like to meet him." Marcus froze. "Who?" "Tommy, your son." She said it gently. "If you're going to work for me, even for one night, I'd like to know the person you're doing this for." Every instinct in Marcus's body screamed no. Don't let her into that part of your life. Don't let her see the peeling paint in your apartment, the second-hand clothes, the way you've learned to make a dollar stretch until it tears. But something in her expression stopped him. Something honest. "Saturday," he said. "Lunch. There's a diner near my place, nothing fancy." "I don't need fancy," Victoria replied. "I just need real." December 29th, 12:15 p.m. The diner was called Rosie's, and it had been there for 40 years. Red vinyl booths, checkered floors, a jukebox in the corner that still played Elvis. Marcus and Tommy sat in their usual spot by the window. Tommy was colouring on the paper placemat with crayons Rosie kept behind the counter. He'd drawn a superhero, cape, mask, the works. "Who's that?" Marcus asked. "You," Tommy said without looking up. Marcus's chest tightened. "I'm not a superhero, bud." "Yes, you are. You work hard and take care of me. That's what superheroes do." The bell above the door chimed. Victoria Ashford walked in, and she looked completely out of place. Designer jeans, cashmere sweater, but no pretense. She spotted them and smiled. Marcus stood. "Victoria, this is Tommy. Tommy, this is Ms. Ashford." Tommy looked up, eyes wide. "Are you a princess?" Victoria laughed, a real surprised laugh. "No, definitely not a princess." "You look like one," Tommy said seriously. "Well, thank you. You look like a superhero." Tommy beamed. They ordered lunch, burgers and fries for Tommy and Marcus. Victoria got a grilled chicken salad, but she kept eyeing Tommy's fries like they were contraband. "You can have one," Tommy said, pushing his plate toward her. Victoria hesitated, then took a fry. "These are really good." "Best in the city," Marcus said. "Rosie's been making them the same way since 1983. They talked. Small things at first. Tommy's school, his favorite subjects, art and recess, his dreams, astronaut, then superhero, then maybe both. Victoria listened like every word mattered, and Marcus realized she wasn't performing. She was genuinely interested. "Your dad tells me he's working for me next week," Victoria said to Tommy. Tommy nodded. "He's the best cook. Everyone says so." "I believe it." Victoria glanced at Marcus. "You're lucky to have him." "I know." Tommy's voice was matter-of-fact, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. After lunch, Tommy went to look at the jukebox, leaving Marcus and Victoria alone. "He's amazing," Victoria said quietly. "He's everything." Marcus stared at his son. "I don't get a lot right, but I got him right." "You're a good father, Marcus." "I'm a broke father," he corrected. "There's a difference." "No, there isn't." Victoria's voice was firm. "Money doesn't make you a good parent. Showing up does, and you show up every single day." Marcus didn't know how to respond to that. "My father worked all the time," Victoria continued, her eyes distant. "Built an empire. Left me everything. But I'd trade it all for one more day where he wasn't too busy to have lunch with me." And there it was. The crack in her armor, the loneliness that came from having everything except the one thing that mattered. "I'm sorry," Marcus said. "Me too." Victoria smiled, but it was sad. "That's why this gala matters. It's for a scholarship fund in his name, for kids whose parents work 3 jobs and still can't afford college. Kids well, like you were. Marcus looked at her, saw the grief, saw the guilt, saw someone trying to honor a ghost. "I'll make sure the food is perfect," he said. "I know you will." Tommy came running back. "Daddy, can we play the Elvis song?" "Sure, bud." Marcus pulled out a quarter, one of the coins from his $4.37s. He handed it to Tommy. "Number B7. Tommy ran to the jukebox. "Can't Help Falling in Love" started playing, crackling through old speakers. Victoria stood to leave. "Thank you for today, for letting me meet him." "Thank you for caring," Marcus said, and he meant it. As she reached the door, Tommy called out, "Miss Ashford!" She turned. "You should come back," Tommy said. "We come here every Saturday." Victoria's eyes met Marcus's. Something passed between them, understanding maybe, or possibility. "I'd like that," she said. Then she left. Marcus watched through the window as she walked to a black Mercedes. She paused before getting in, looked back at the diner, then drove away. "I like her," Tommy said, climbing back into the booth. "She's nice." "Yeah," Marcus said quietly. "She is." And for the first time in 2 years, Marcus let himself wonder if things could be different. If a man with $4.37 and a woman with billions could find something that mattered more than the gap between them. Marcus stood in the venue kitchen and his hands wouldn't stop shaking. The Ashford Technologies Gala was being held at the Meridian, a hotel where rooms started at $800 a night and the chandeliers probably cost more than his annual salary. The kitchen was state-of-the-art, sous vide machines, induction cooktops, a walk-in refrigerator the size of his apartment. And Marcus was in charge of the menu for 200 guests. Rivera. Chef Bernard had been hired to oversee the event, and his face was already red with stress. The salmon needs to be perfect. These aren't regular customers. These are investors, CEOs, people who'll remember if you screw up. "I know, Chef. Do you?" Bernard stepped closer. His breath smelled like coffee and cigarettes. "Because if you embarrass Ms. Ashford tonight, you'll never work in this city again. Understand?" Marcus's jaw clenched. "Yes, Chef." The kitchen buzzed with activity. 12 other cooks, all hired for the night, all pretending Marcus wasn't the weak link. He'd spent the past 2 days planning the menu with Victoria. Seared salmon with lemon butter sauce, roasted vegetables, risotto that he could make in his sleep. But his confidence from the test kitchen evaporated the moment he walked into the Meridian. These weren't regular people. These were Victoria's people, and he was just the cook. At 5:30 p.m., Victoria appeared in the kitchen doorway. She wore a floor-length emerald gown that caught the light, her hair swept up, makeup perfect. She looked like she belonged in a magazine. She looked like someone Marcus shouldn't even be breathing the same air as. "Marcus," her voice cut through the chaos, "can I talk to you?" He wiped his hands on his apron and followed her to a quiet corner. "How are you feeling?" she asked. "Terrified," he admitted. She smiled. "Good. That means you care." She glanced at the kitchen, then back at him. "My brother is here. Richard. He's difficult." "Difficult how?" "He thinks this scholarship fund is a waste of money. He thinks I'm being sentimental about our father." Her voice tightened, "and he's been asking questions about you." Marcus felt cold. "What kind of questions? Where you came from? Why I hired you? He thinks you're some kind of charity case I'm using to feel good about myself." "Aren't I?" The words came out harsher than he intended. Victoria's eyes flashed. "No, you're a talented cook who deserves a break, but Richard doesn't see it that way. He sees you as a threat." "A threat? I'm nobody." "You're not nobody." She stepped closer, her voice dropping. "You're someone I respect. Someone I trust, and that terrifies him because he's used to being the only person I rely on." Marcus didn't know what to say to that. "Just be careful tonight," Victoria said. "Don't let him get in your head." She left before Marcus could respond. At 7 p.m., the guests started arriving. Marcus could hear them through the kitchen walls, laughter, clinking glasses, the low hum of conversations about stocks and mergers and vacation homes. He focused on the food. Sear the salmon, check the temperature, 90 seconds per side, perfect crust. By 8:15 p.m., the first plates went out. By 8:45 p.m., Marcus had found his rhythm. The kitchen became a dance, call and response, heat and timing, muscle memory taking over. Then the door swung open. A man walked in, tall, silver-haired, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost $5,000. He had Victoria's eyes, but none of her warmth. "Which one of you is Rivera?" His voice was sharp. Marcus looked up. "I am." The man studied him like he was inspecting something defective. "I'm Richard Ashford, Victoria's brother." He picked up a plate of salmon, examined it. "This is what she's paying you $2,000 for?" "Yes, sir." "Interesting." Richard set the plate down. "Tell me something, Rivera. What makes you think you belong here?" The kitchen went quiet. Every cook pretended to work while listening. "I'm here to cook," Marcus said evenly. "That's all. That's all." Richard smiled, but it wasn't friendly. "My sister seems to think you're special, some kind of diamond in the rough. I wanted to see for myself." He leaned against the counter. "You have a son, don't you? 7 years old." Marcus's blood went cold. "That's none of your business. Everything about people in my sister's orbit is my business." Richard's voice was casual, but his eyes were ice. Single father, 3 years at Bellamy's. Before that, bounced around 6 restaurants in 5 years. No degree, no prospects, just a man barely keeping his head above water. "I work hard for my son." "I'm sure you do, but here's what I think." Richard stepped closer. "I think my sister feels sorry for you. I think she's using you to ease her guilt about having money while people like you struggle. And I think once tonight is over, you'll go back to washing dishes, and she'll forget you exist." Marcus's hands curled into fists. "Stay calm. Don't react. Tommy needs that $2,000. With all due respect, Mr. Ashford, your sister doesn't strike me as someone who does anything out of pity." "Then you don't know her very well." Richard straightened his cuffs. "Enjoy your 15 minutes, Rivera. They won't last." He walked out. Bernard appeared next to Marcus. "Get back to work, and don't let that rich prick get in your head." But it was too late. The seed was planted. What if Richard was right? What if this was just Victoria playing savior? What if $2,000 was just a Band-Aid on a wound that would never heal? Marcus pushed the thoughts away and cooked, because that's what he did. He cooked when his wife left. He cooked when the rent was late. He cooked when Tommy cried for his mother in the middle of the night. Cooking was the one thing Marcus controlled. At 9:30 p.m., Victoria came back to the kitchen. "Marcus, the guests are asking for the chef. Will you come out?" His stomach dropped. "I'm not. You are tonight." She smiled. "Come on, just for a minute." He followed her through the doors into the ballroom. 200 people in designer clothes, champagne glasses, the kind of wealth that made Marcus feel like an intruder. A string quartet played in the corner. Crystal chandeliers cast everything in golden light. Victoria led him to a small stage where a microphone waited. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice amplified, "I want to introduce you to the man responsible for tonight's incredible meal, Marcus Rivera." Polite applause, a few smiles, mostly curiosity. Marcus stood there, acutely aware of his stained apron, his calloused hands, the faint smell of kitchen grease that clung to him. "Marcus has been cooking for 15 years, Victoria continued. "He's worked in some of the best kitchens in the city. And tonight he's created something truly special for us. Please join me in thanking him." More applause. But Marcus saw the looks, the way their eyes swept over him, dismissed him, returned to their conversations. He was entertainment, a novelty, the poor cook Victoria brought out to show how charitable she was. And then he saw Richard Ashford in the back, smiling. Marcus's throat tightened. He nodded once and walked back to the kitchen. The rest of the night was a blur, plates in, plates out, clean up. By 11:45 p.m., it was over. The guests were gone. The kitchen staff was packing up. Bernard handed Marcus an envelope. From Miss Ashford. Cash. Count it. Marcus opened the envelope. 20 $100 bills. Exactly $2,000. It felt heavier than it should. He found Victoria in the empty ballroom, standing by the windows, looking out at the city. "Hey," he said quietly. She turned. Her makeup was slightly smudged, her hair coming loose from its pins. She looked tired. "You did amazing tonight," she said. "Did I?" Marcus held up the envelope. "Or did I just prove your brother right?" Victoria frowned. "What did Richard say to you?" "The truth." Marcus's voice was flat. "That I'm a charity case, that you're using me to feel better about yourself, that once tonight is over, I'll go back to being invisible. Marcus, is he wrong?" The words burst out before he could stop them. "Because standing up there in front of all those people, all I could think was that I don't belong, that you brought me here to show everyone how generous you are, the poor single dad you rescued for a night." "That's not true." Victoria's voice shook. "I brought you here because you're talented, because you deserve recognition, because you felt sorry for me." Marcus's voice rose. "I've spent 2 years busting my ass to provide for my son, and in one night you've made me feel like everything I've done doesn't matter, like I'm just a project for you to fix." Silence. Victoria's eyes glistened. "Is that really what you think?" Marcus looked at the envelope in his hand. $2,000. More money than he'd seen in months. And all he felt was shame. "I think I should go," he said quietly. "Marcus, please." "Thank you for the opportunity, Miss Ashford. I'll make sure my son has a good New Year." He walked away before she could respond, before he could see the hurt on her face, before he could take back the words that felt true and terrible at the same time. Tommy was at Mrs. Chen's for the day. Marcus sat alone in his apartment, staring at 20 $100 bills spread across his coffee table. He should feel relieved, grateful. This was rent for 2 months, groceries, a cushion against disaster. Instead, he felt hollow. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. "Can we talk, please?" He didn't respond. Another text. "I'm sorry about last night." "You were right. I wasn't thinking about how it would feel for you." Marcus set the phone down, picked it up, typed, "You don't owe me anything. I'm fine." Her response was immediate. "You're not fine. And I do owe you at least a conversation." He stared at the screen, typed, "Why do you care?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Because you remind me of my father, and because I haven't felt this awake in 5 years." Marcus closed his eyes. He shouldn't care. He shouldn't let her words matter. But they did. His phone rang. Victoria. He answered. "Hello. Thank you for picking up." Her voice was softer than usual. "Marcus, I need to tell you something. About my father. You don't have to." "I do. Please, just listen." Marcus sat back on the couch. "My father's name was Antonio Ashford," Victoria said. "But that wasn't his real name. He changed it when he immigrated from Mexico in 1978. His real name was Antonio Rivera." Marcus's blood went cold. "What?" "Rivera. Same as yours. He came here with nothing. Worked in restaurant kitchens for 15 years before he saved enough to start his tech company. He used to tell me stories about the chefs he learned from, the people who gave him a chance when no one else would." Marcus's heart hammered. Why are you telling me this? Because when I saw you in that restaurant, being treated like you were nothing, I saw him, and I realized that somewhere along the way I forgot where I came from. I forgot that my father was you 30 years ago. That everything I have exists because people like you work themselves to the bone for scraps. Marcus couldn't speak. I'm not trying to save you, Victoria continued, her voice breaking. I'm trying to honor him. And maybe I'm trying to save myself from becoming someone he wouldn't recognize. Silence stretched between them. There's something else, Victoria said. The scholarship fund. It's for children of kitchen workers specifically, because my father never forgot where he started. He wanted to make sure kids like Tommy, kids whose parents work in kitchens, had a chance at something better. Marcus's throat tightened. Tommy. Yes, and Marcus. There's a gala tonight, New Year's Eve, the fund announcement. I want you there, not as the cook, as my guest. Victoria, please. I know I screwed up last night. I know I made you feel small when you're anything but I'm asking you to give me another chance, to let me do this right. Marcus looked at the money on the table, looked at the photo of Tommy on the wall, gap-toothed smile, holding a drawing of a superhero. What time? He asked. December 31st, 7:58 p.m. Marcus stood outside the Meridian Hotel again, but this time he wasn't wearing an apron. He'd borrowed a suit from Carlos, a friend from his old restaurant. It was too big in the shoulders and too short in the sleeves, but it was better than showing up in jeans. Victoria met him at the entrance. She wore a midnight blue gown, her hair down in waves, and when she saw him, her whole face lit up. You came, she breathed. Yeah, I did. She took his arm, and they walked inside together. The ballroom was even more crowded than last night. More wealth, more power. Marcus felt every eye on him as they entered, the man who didn't belong. Richard Ashford appeared almost immediately. Victoria, I see you've brought your pet project again. Richard, Victoria's voice was ice. This is Marcus Rivera, and he's here as my guest. Not that I need your approval. Richard's smile was thin. Of course. How progressive of you. He walked away, and Marcus exhaled. Ignore him, Victoria said. He's bitter because father left me in charge of the company instead of him. They moved through the crowd. Victoria introduced Marcus to investors, CEOs, people whose names he'd only seen in newspapers. Most were polite, some were curious. A few looked at him like he was dirt on Victoria's shoe. At 8:30 p.m., Victoria took the stage. Thank you all for being here tonight, she said into the microphone. As you know, we're launching the Antonio Rivera Memorial Scholarship Fund, named after my father, a man who started with nothing and built everything. The room applauded. But what some of you don't know, Victoria continued, is that my father's birth name wasn't Ashford. It was Rivera. He was an immigrant, a line cook, someone who worked 16-hour days in restaurant kitchens before he ever wrote a line of code. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Tonight, I want to introduce you to someone who reminds me of him, someone who embodies the kind of work ethic and dignity my father valued above all else. She looked directly at Marcus. Marcus Rivera, would you join me on stage? Marcus's heart stopped. No, he whispered. But Victoria was already gesturing, and people were turning to look, and there was no escape. He walked to the stage on legs that didn't feel like his own. Victoria handed him the microphone. Tell them about Tommy. Marcus stared at 200 faces. 200 people who had more money than he'd see in a lifetime. 200 people who were waiting for him to entertain them with his poverty. His hands shook. I don't know what to say. Tell them the truth, Victoria said softly. Tell them what it's like. And something inside Marcus broke, or maybe it opened. He didn't know. But the words came. "My name is Marcus Rivera. I'm 32 years old. I'm a line cook at Bellamy's, and before that, I worked at 6 other restaurants in 5 years." His voice was rough. "I make $13.50 an hour. I work 60 hours a week, and at the end of the day, I still have to choose between feeding my son and keeping the lights on." The room was silent. "2 years ago, my wife left me because she met someone with money, someone who could give her the life she wanted. She was right to leave. I'm broke. I'm tired. I'm one bad week away from losing everything." Marcus's voice cracked. "But I'm still here because my son needs me. Because I'd rather work myself to death than let him think his father gave up." He looked at Victoria, then back at the crowd. "Ms. Ashford offered me a job last week, $2,000 to cook for a gala. I almost said no because I thought it was charity. Because I've spent my whole life being invisible to people like you, and suddenly being seen felt worse than being ignored." He paused. "But I said yes, because my son deserves better than what I can give him, and if that makes me weak or proud or whatever you think, I don't care anymore." Tears burned his eyes, but he didn't look away. "I'm not special. I'm not unique. There are thousands of people like me in this city, working jobs you don't see, raising kids on wages that don't cover rent, trying to survive in a world that doesn't care if we live or die. And the only reason I'm standing here is because Ms. Ashford decided I mattered, that my son mattered." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "So if you're going to judge me for accepting help, go ahead, but don't pretend you wouldn't do the same if you were drowning." He set the microphone down and walked off the stage. The silence was deafening. Then someone started clapping, a slow, steady rhythm. Marcus turned. It was an older man in the front row. Grey hair, kind eyes. Then another person joined, then another. Within seconds, the entire room was applauding. Not polite applause, real applause. People were standing. Marcus stood frozen, tears streaming down his face, as 200 of the wealthiest people in the city gave him a standing ovation. Victoria appeared beside him, her own eyes wet. She took his hand. "You just changed everything," she whispered. Richard Ashford stood in the back, his face pale, and walked out. The gala was over. The guests were gone. Marcus and Victoria stood on the hotel rooftop, looking out at the city as fireworks exploded over the water. "I can't believe I did that," Marcus said. His voice was hoarse from crying, from speaking, from letting 200 strangers see him at his most vulnerable. "You were incredible." Victoria's hand was still in his, warm and solid. "Do you know what happened after you left the stage?" "I blacked out." She laughed softly. 5 people pledged additional donations, 2 CEOs offered you job interviews, and 1 woman, a restaurant owner, wants to talk to you about running her kitchen. Marcus blinked. "What? You told the truth, and people responded." Victoria turned to face him. "Marcus, you have no idea how rare that is. Most people in that room spend their entire lives performing, pretending. You just stripped all that away." "I was terrified." "I know." She reached up, gently wiping a tear from his cheek. "But you did it anyway." They stood close now, close enough that Marcus could smell her perfume, something light and expensive that reminded him of gardens he'd never walked in. "Victoria," he said quietly, "why are you really doing this? All of this?" "Because I'm lonely," she admitted. "Because I have everything my father worked for, and it feels empty. Because when I look at you, I see someone who hasn't forgotten what matters." Her voice broke. "Because for the first time in 5 years, I feel like I'm doing something that would make him proud." Marcus cupped her face with his calloused, kitchen-scarred hand. "You're already doing that. You don't know that." "Yes, I do." He smiled. "You're fighting for people like me, like your father. That's exactly what he'd want." Victoria closed her eyes, leaning into his touch. "I don't want to screw this up, whatever this is." "Neither do I." I'm a billionaire, Marcus. You're a line cook. People are going to talk, judge, make assumptions. Let them. Marcus's voice was steady now. I've been judged my whole life. What's a little more? She laughed through tears. You're insane. Maybe, but I'm here. Victoria looked up at him, and something shifted in her expression. I have a confession. Okay. That night at Bellamy's, when I came to the alley, I didn't just happen to be there. She took a breath. I saw you through the kitchen window earlier that day, the way you worked, the way you treated everyone with respect even when they didn't deserve it. And I couldn't stop thinking about you. Marcus's heart hammered. Victoria. I came back that night specifically to find you, to apologize for that customer. But really, I just wanted to meet you. She smiled nervously. So if anyone's the creepy stalker here, it's me. Marcus laughed, a real, surprised laugh that echoed across the rooftop. You're telling me a billionaire CEO stalked a line cook? Yes, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. I know, Victoria bit her lip. Does it change anything? Marcus looked at her, this woman who had everything but wanted him, this person who saw past the grease stains and exhaustion to something worth knowing. And he realized something. No, it doesn't change anything. He kissed her. It was soft at first, tentative, like they were both afraid to break something fragile. Then Victoria's arms wrapped around his neck, and Marcus pulled her closer, and it stopped being tentative. It became real. It became the thing neither of them knew they needed until this exact moment. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Victoria rested her forehead against his. What now? She whispered. Now. Marcus smiled. Now I have to figure out how to tell my 7-year-old that the princess from the diner is actually his dad's girlfriend. Victoria laughed. You think Tommy will be okay with this? Are you kidding? He's been asking when you're coming back for the past 3 days. They stood there as the city celebrated below them, champagne and confetti, strangers kissing at midnight, the promise of a new year. But up here, it was just the two of them, a line cook and a CEO, a father and a daughter of immigrants, two people who shouldn't fit but somehow did. I want to help, Victoria said suddenly, with Tommy, with your bills, with... Stop. Marcus's voice was gentle but firm. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. I'm not your project. I'm not your redemption. I'm your equal, even if my bank account doesn't reflect it. You are my equal, Victoria said fiercely. You always have been. Then let me work for it. Let me earn my place in your life, not just accept it because you feel guilty about having money. Victoria studied his face. You're stubborn. I'm practical. Marcus smiled. But maybe we can compromise. You help me figure out this restaurant owner meeting. I cook you dinner at my apartment. Tommy can show you his superhero drawings, and you can pretend they're good. They are good. They're stick figures. Artistic stick figures. Marcus laughed and pulled her close again. I can't believe this is happening. Neither can I. Victoria's voice was soft. But I'm glad it is. Zushin. They stayed on that rooftop until the fireworks ended and the city quieted. Then they went downstairs, and Marcus called Mrs. Chen to check on Tommy, and Victoria drove him home in her Mercedes that smelled like leather and possibility. When they pulled up to his building, peeling paint, broken security door, trash on the sidewalk, Victoria didn't flinch. She just looked at him and smiled. When can I see you again? She asked. Saturday, Rosie's Diner, 12:15 p.m., our usual spot. I'll be there. Marcus got out of the car, then leaned back in through the window. Victoria? Yeah? Thank you. For everything. For seeing me. Her eyes glistened. Thank you for letting me. He watched her drive away, then climbed the stairs to his apartment where Tommy was sleeping peacefully in Mrs. Chen's care, and $2,000 was still spread across his coffee table, and everything was exactly the same, but completely different. Marcus picked up the photo of Tommy, the one where he was holding a drawing of a superhero. "We're going to be okay, buddy," he whispered. "Better than okay." And for the first time in 2 years, Marcus believed it. Epilogue 6 months later. Marcus stood in the kitchen of Sophia's, the restaurant owned by the woman who'd approached him after his speech. She'd offered him the position of head chef, and after weeks of convincing himself he deserved it, he'd accepted. The restaurant was small, 30 tables, farm-to-table menu, nothing fancy. But it was his kitchen, and that meant everything. Tommy sat at the counter doing homework and stealing bits of vegetables Marcus was prepping. "Daddy, when is Victoria coming?" Tommy asked around a mouthful of carrot. "After your bedtime, bud. We're going to the fundraiser gala." Tommy made a face. "You go to a lot of galas now." "I know, but this one's important. It's for the scholarship fund. The scholarship fund that now had 15 recipients. The scholarship fund that Victoria had named after her father and Marcus had helped build. The scholarship fund that was changing lives. The back door opened and Victoria walked in. Jeans, sweater, hair in a ponytail. She looked nothing like the woman he'd met in an alley 7 months ago. She looked real. "Hey, you two," she said, dropping a kiss on Tommy's head, then walking around to kiss Marcus. Tommy made gagging sounds. "Real mature, bud," Marcus said, but he was smiling. "Did you tell him?" Victoria asked. Marcus shook his head. "I was waiting for you." They both turned to Tommy. "Tell me what?" Tommy looked suspicious. Victoria pulled out an envelope. "The scholarship committee made their decisions for next year, and there's a special award for kids who show exceptional creativity and determination." Tommy's eyes went wide. "Did I?" "You got it," Marcus said, his voice thick. "Full ride to art camp this summer, plus money for supplies." Tommy launched himself at both of them, hugging them so hard Marcus almost dropped his knife. "I can't believe it." Tommy was crying and laughing at the same time. "I can really go." "You can really go," Victoria said. They stood there, the three of them, in a small kitchen that smelled like garlic and hope, and Marcus thought about the man he'd been 7 months ago. Broke, desperate, invisible. He wasn't that man anymore. He was still a cook, still working long hours, still struggling sometimes, but he wasn't invisible. He had Victoria, who saw him. He had Tommy, who loved him. He had a job that respected him, and he had proof that sometimes the gap between two worlds wasn't as wide as it seemed. Sometimes all it took was someone brave enough to cross it. Marcus looked at Victoria over Tommy's head. She mouthed, "I love you." He mouthed back, "I love you too." And in that moment, in that kitchen, with his son in his arms and the woman he loved by his side, Marcus Rivera, 32-year-old line cook, single father, survivor, finally believed what Tommy had been telling him all along. He was a superhero, not because he was rich, not because he was powerful, but because he'd shown up every single day. And that was enough.